because people feel so incredible that they're not attached to their past any longer. They're so connected to they're so connected to their future that they stop telling the story of their past. They're telling the story of their future. They're no longer believing in their past. They're believing in their future. They're no longer romancing their past. They're in a romance with their future. And if oxytocin levels are up, and it's the chemical that bonds, and then you're going to believe in that future you're creating with all of your heart, it better be opened and activated. And we're going to measure it. And I'm going to tell you, you're doing it or you're not. And so then when people start realizing it was never about that, it was about who they became, that we overcome that week. We overcome. I give people numerous opportunities to get beyond themselves, numerous opportunities to connect with themselves. I want them to get frustrated. I want them to get impatient. I want them to get overly analytical, because that's the end of their belief. And then finally, when they finally make up their mind to let go and just do it, and they run into that feeling, they run into that experience, they're all in. You think they don't want a sports car anymore. They want that, whatever that was. And if it comes with a transcendental moment, when they come back to their senses from that inner experience, their spectrum of reality is broadened. They're seeing things they had never seen before because their brain wasn't wired to see it, but it didn't come from the environment, it came from their inner environment. That transcendental moment now is producing a feeling, a frequency that is so unusual. It's so much joy, so much bliss, so much ecstasy. I've watched people have to stop it because it's way bigger than them. Now, I would consider that a good problem to have. You measure that person's immune system. You measure the changes in their heart rate variability, not a little amplitude, huge amplitudes. That person is feeling a lot of love. And imagine it's a man. Imagine a man whose heart is open that wide. They sob with the freedom to be able to not care what they look like. We're trying to fit into some paradigm or mold. So then a new consciousness in that footprint is emerging, and we have scientific evidence. I can tell you can make your brain work better in a week. You can make your heart more coherent. You can change the field around your body. You can strengthen your immune system. You can change your gene expression. You can lengthen your life. You can create so many oxidative changes in your cells. We have great research to prove that. That's the truth of who you are. That's the truth, that miracle within you. That evidence is the backbone that gives people permission to try it out. It's the language. Then you see someone standing on the stage telling their story in testimony, whether it's stage 4 cancer, whether it's MS, whether it's blind people seeing, deaf people hearing. You can't go back to being the same person after that. Evidence is the loudest voice. And so then when we begin to make those inroads, and the footprint exists in consciousness, and you're witnessing it in three-dimensional reality, the illusion of limitation begins to change. And now all you want to do is you crave the unknown. So people in our work don't get up in the morning and go, oh God, I got to do my meditation today. No, they're not doing that. Their body is waking them up, saying, get out of bed, because they don't want the magic to end. And when you start seeing the gap between cause and effect, thought and experience closing down, you're moving closer to the divine. And when that happens, all the things you thought you want, you no longer want, because the overcoming process leading to who you become, nobody can take that away from you. So we practice it in our seated meditations. We practice it standing and walking. You better walk as it, and you better be able to embody it and practice doing it with your eyes open. So when you return back to your life, when you walk from your house to your car, you're walking in the energy of your future. And if you keep doing that, it's going to become a habit. And people are going to start looking at you going, something's different about you. You know why? Because you're no longer showing up equal to their memory of you. Something's different about you. You're unpredictable. It's not what you're saying any longer. It's who you are. And so that person then is off their timeline. They're not headed to that same future. And all I want to do, And a week-long event is bump everybody off that timeline into a new future. Some people, huge degrees. Stage 4 cancers, tumors disappearing. You listen to that story of the person on the stage, your next meditation, you are not going to go half in. You're going to go all in. And that's all I want people to go all in. I want to provide people with my greatest understanding of the truth and then numerous opportunities to experience it, nothing more. And when the magic starts to happen, it's beyond, way bigger than me, it's beyond my control. All I want to do is provide the environment where they feel safe enough to begin to create. This is a time in history right now. 15 years ago, it was philosophy. Quantum physics. Now everybody's informed. Now people. This is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. It's to know how to do it. And if you give them that sound scientific information, I now know that if I can speak it in a way that nothing is left to conjecture, nothing is left to superstition, nothing is left to dogma. They know exactly what they're doing and why. And the moment you know the what and the why, the how starts to get easier. So I will deliver concepts, ideas, mix different forms of science to create a model of understanding. And I now know that if that person, as I develop this model of understanding, can explain that model to someone else, they're wiring it in their brain. They're installing the hardware. If they can't explain it, it's not wired in their brain, and they're not going to believe that they can do it. So if they can turn the person next to them, between the two of them, and build a model of understanding, they're making their brain fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. They're changing their mind. Mind is the brain in action. If I keep reminding them of what they're learning, nerve cells that fire together wire together. They're installing the circuitry. Now, the next step is to provide the environment and give them the proper instruction to get their behaviors to match their intentions, to get their actions equal to their thoughts, to get their mind and body working together. If they do, they're going to run into a new experience. Now, the crazy thing about the experience is learning is making new synaptic connections. That's what learning is. Research shows that you pay attention and learn something new and you repeat it just for an hour, you're going to double the number of connections in your brain. That's a lot, 1,600 to the 3,200 connections. That's a lot of extra connections. But if you don't review it, if you don't think about it, if you don't repeat it, those circuits prune apart within hours or days. So if learning is making new connections, then remembering is maintaining and sustaining those connections. You got to review it. It's so much easier to forget than remember when it comes to this stuff, and it's a constant process. So then, if they can get their behaviors to match their intentions, and they have a new experience enriches the philosophical circuits in the brain. But when those neurons string into place, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And when you start feeling unlimited, when you start feeling worthy, when you are having an experience that causes you to be more in love with life, it is that chemical release from the limbic brain that teaches your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. So if knowledge is for the mind, experience is for the body, and in that moment the person's embodying the truth of that philosophy, and now they're selecting and instructing new genes from the experience because the chemistry that's coming from the environment is information. And so genes make proteins, and all of a sudden they start wearing a different body. Repeat it over and over again. Do anything over and over again. Neurochemically, you'll condition your mind and body begin to work as one. Do it enough times, now your body will know better than your conscious mind. Now it's innate in you. Now it's second nature. Now it's simple. Now you know that you know.